Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Citizens of Lorcana podcast, a podcast where we invite you to be a part of their world. We're your hosts, Jared and James. Today, we are talking with a deck building and all around amazing person, Lindsay. So, without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Hey everyone, welcome to another week. Last week, we visited with the Live, Laugh, Lorcana team, Katie and Becky. I wasn't able to be on that call, so I had the chance to go back and listen to it, and it was excellent. So if you haven't, make sure to go back and listen. Today we are joined by someone who has helped me tremendously in my Lorcana journey. You might recognize her from her Discord username, Lumaqueer Lindsay, but we know her as Lindsay. Hey, welcome.
Hi, thanks. So glad to be on. Really flattered that you asked me.
Yeah, I bet it came as a little surprise out of the blue because it's not like we'd been talking or anything. I just kind of reached out to you and I'd be like, you know, we really want to get better at our game, and you are so good at deck building.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I know I'm not a content creator, at least not yet, but I like contributing in the Discords and everything.
Well, you threw that little teaser out there. Not yet. You got something in the works?
Um, actually was gonna get into that in a little
Okay,
bit, some of my
okay.
ideas. No worries.
Well, we'll save it. So here at the beginning, we have a new segment that we're calling Deck Tech and Specs. So we're gonna start there. If you were to go to locals this week, what are you taking?
All right. So actually, I have been since the meta has just kind of evolved so much with set 2 from where it started. I'm back on my original idea when the set first launched. It's my Amber Sapphire Alice Songs deck. Have tweaked it a little bit with where things are at, but at least at my locals, Steel Sapphire has become quite the deck, and people are either running that or Ruby Amethyst. And my Alice Songs is actually doing really well against the Steel Sapphire decks. So running things like Cogsworth, it's just so good against Steel, and they just have basically no answers unless they get their big blue Hades out. So yeah, I've kind of teched that deck back up, and I'm getting some good use out of Alice.
I am going to have to see this deck because, as everybody knows, I'm Team Sapphire and I'm about to give up. But I really want Alice. I really want Bell to work. So if you have a deck with Alice that works, I need to see that. But that's why we're talking to you, deck building. So you already kind of talked about good matchups. You said it matches up good against Steel. But what about Ruby Amethyst? How does it match up against that?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the tougher matchups, and one of the reasons I dropped it a bit and started playing some other stuff like the Mufasa decks. But with the rise of kind of flute, like the flutes taking over in the Steel Song decks, I decided to tech those into my own Alice decks, and that's been pretty good. It's still definitely its hardest matchup, but the flutes can sometimes, just put you there because Ruby Amethyst's big weakness is they have zero item removal. You play that flute down, they cannot do anything about it.
So are you running a lot of songs in this deck then? Like I know Yellow
Y-
has a lot of songs, but the
yes.
strength of that deck usually comes from the Steel songs.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm actually running 16 songs. I think my Steel song list though had 20, so it's a little bit less than that. But the big differences are Let It Go, obviously, which Ariel can sing. Really love being able to get that off early. And with running Alice in the deck and the Queen Shift, it makes Criminal World's Greatest Criminal Mind so much better of a song and so much easier to get off to just kill anything. So I actually run 4 World's Greatest Criminal Minds because you can use support on your enemies' characters. Don't
Yes.
forget that.
I
That
love
is so
doing that
smart.
in the Princess Steel song deck. I love doing that with Mulan and the Queen to my opponents. And be like, oh yeah, by the way, here's World's Greatest Criminal Mind. And they're like, what?
Yep. So that helps give you the extra songs that you don't have because you're not running Steel. So yeah.
How satisfying is it when you get Alice to go off?
Oh, it's the best feeling. She's such a fun win condition. And if you have the queen shift out, it's so easy to just start getting so much lore there at the end. She's a really nice win con.
Okay, do you shift the queen right away on turn two if you can? Because when I've done this before, it's like you shift on turn two, but then you just have the queen and she just feels really vulnerable. Or do you save it until you have a better board presence.
Yeah, depends on the matchup. Like versus an aggro deck, a lot of times I will just because it gives you that better body for trading. And if I have a World's Criminal Mind in hand, then I might shift it earlier just to try to get an easy kill. You can also use her to sing Let It Go early if you need to. I usually prefer saving that till later. But against other mid-range and control, I probably don't shift her right away. I focus on building a little bit more of a board, and especially getting the aerial down turn 3 to start digging for songs.
Wow. That's great. I love it. So now what does your deck have to look out for? Like what are its weak spots?
Yeah, definitely control and that darn goat. I know a lot of us are really sick of the goat. But I'm kind of at a point where I mean, unless you're running steel and trying to, whole new world to discard the goat, which they could just draw another one. There's just no interaction, so I've stopped focusing on trying to beat that specifically and just kind of streamlining, building a solid deck and using the flutes as I can to get over control. But it's still a tough matchup. There's just no good answer to goat right now.
I love it. I mean, I want to try this deck out now after chatting about it.
Thanks.
Well, so as mentioned, you are a prolific deck builder. I think both Jared and I have used at least one of your decks that you've posted, and they're very good. So, how did you develop into being able to build decks like that?
Yeah, thank you. That I'm honestly flattered you've used my decks. That's great. So I've been playing card like TCGs since middle school, and I'm 33 now, so it's been a while. I got a lot more into the deck building aspect of it though with online card games actually. There was a game that popped up during the Hearthstone craze that was Elder Scrolls Legends. A lot of people didn't know this happened, but Bethesda had their own card game. And that's where I was a content creator for a while. I was a streamer for that game and got into deck building. I got to be on one of Bethesda's big tournaments that they streamed. So that was really fun. Sadly, the game was short-lived, and Bethesda decided they did not want to get into the online card space. So I've been looking for something to take that space in my heart, and Lorcana has done that. So now I'm like, oh, cool. I can bring my deck building back and try and work on things over here and get a good start right at the beginning.
But like, did it come natural to you, or did you read kind of like clunky at the start, and then you've slowly like through your years of experience, you just kind of know like the nuances? Because James and I, for all intents and purposes, started playing TCGs with Lorcana,
Yeah.
so we're still pretty new. We don't have that like database of knowledge that you have.
Yeah, so I mean, I think just my years of, I've started with Yu-Gi-Oh! I played some Magic. It was very casual back then though, but I at least had some understanding of how to build a deck. Um, with the Elder Scrolls Legends though was when I got into competitive mainly because I was trying to get into tournaments and doing streaming and getting followers, but that kind of got me to really like look into different videos, even just on Magic, about learning what curve is and different synergies and combos and learning about card advantage. I remember first starting in games like Yu-Gi-Oh! I used to think at the beginning, like, oh, Pot of Greed, what a terrible card. Like, draw two, I have to spend a card to draw two. But now, I know that's actually really, really good. Like, we have friends on the other side, and we all know that card is really strong. So it just took time, but I kind of had to buckle down and like be like, okay, this is something I want to do. I'm gonna learn, and looked up videos and tested decks constantly on stream, trying to figure out what worked and what didn't.
That's great. So let's say I stink at deck building, which I do. Take us through the process. Like, how do you start? Do you like go online, find a deck that you kind of like, and then you tweak it, or do you just like look at your cards and you're like, I want to make this Alice card work, and I'm gonna build around it.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of different directions I take, I guess. I do like to start with, in my mind, there's absolutely nothing wrong with net decking. And I know I say this a lot in the Discord because sometimes there's people that don't exactly agree with that, but I'm always flattered when someone does use my deck. There's nothing wrong with that. And, not being good at deck building isn't a bad thing. There is a skill to running a deck just as much as there is to the deck building. But basically, when I'm building a deck, sometimes like with Alice, it was definitely I love this card. How can I make this work? And in set one, I ran Amber Sapphire mostly throughout that. I topped a couple tournaments here in Denver with that. And I took that idea and was like, what if I put Alice in here? I get lots of other support stuff like the Queen. We can try and synergize with that. So it's really looking at what synergizes with that card that you want. And that's not to say that it will always work out, though. There's definitely some cards that I love that just don't have a place, don't have a good deck. So it's really a lot of trial and error. Um, that said, I definitely have looked at other people's decks and taken my own spin on it. I think one of the best examples of that is the Princess Steel Song. Me and someone in the HQ Discord named Top 8 got together and kind of put together this princess idea. I think our main goal was to try to make Namari really useful in that, and it was a little more interactive of a steel song, and it worked pretty well. But at first we were like, okay, let's look at what steel song is doing right now, and then how can we tweak it from there. So it's a little of both. Sometimes I do go from the ground up, and sometimes I look at other decks.
That's the deck that I wanted to build. I remember you talking about that. And so I placed my order with TCG Player. Oh my gosh, this is the one order from TCG Player that did not come through.
Oh,
They give you like the 3-week window.
yeah.
So I waited that whole time. It didn't come. And then they issued me a refund. And by that time, Still Song fell way, way, way down.
Was gonna say,
So
yeah, sadly, Steel Song is kind of dead right now.
Yeah, it is. It definitely fell off. I was actually playing it, and then for I think it was for a lot of December. I think I actually played your Princess deck version
Okay.
of it. I transferred. I was running one that I kind of had like put together myself with Maximus to get that support to be able to use World's Greatest Criminal Mind and some other stuff. And then I switched to yours, and I was actually it was actually a little bit more successful than my version. But yeah, I played a game, a Steel Song mirror match, and I think we managed to get one battle in, and then like part way through the next one, and I'm like, this is too grueling, and also against Sapphire Steel, it's like you can't do anything against it.
Yep.
As soon as they get that Cogsworth out, and I'm like, this is horrible, and I'm like, I need something else.
Yeah, that's what moved me off of it. Steel Sapphire. Like I said, our locals for some reason love Steel Sapphire, and I just could not get over them with the Steel Song, so I had to pivot.
Yeah, I love the deck, and it's fun, so much fun to play. And if Inklands brings in some stuff that makes it viable again against some of those, I'm switching back for sure. But we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Yep.
So I just wanted to ask one more question about deck building. How do you know when you have a winner? Like you're putting together your deck and you're like, I think this is it. Obviously, there's play testing, but at what point, because you're running your deck now, how do you get to the point where like this is it? This is the one I want to run?
That's a great question. Definitely, I mean, repetitions definitely helps. And I know a lot of people use, some online means to test theirs. I do that a little bit, but not honestly too much. I like playing in paper a lot more. But going to locals, because here in Denver, we have a spot where we have league on Mondays, and then Saturdays we have constructed tournaments every Saturday. So I go to league to really test out my decks, and if it seems to do well, I take it to constructed. But I know I have a winner when I get, at least top 3 or 4 in our constructed. I know I'm placing pretty well and getting those wins I need.
So one of the things that again impresses me about you is not only are you good at building decks, but as I mentioned, I got your deck off of I saw it on the Lorcana HQ Discord, and you are always there talking with people about deck building and sharing decks and offering suggestions and help and gameplay. What drives you to be that, be that kind of person who's in there helping all the time instead of just building your decks and playing?
Yeah, so I've for the longest time been a community builder. Like when I mentioned I was part of the Elder Scrolls Legends, I wasn't just a streamer for that. They had an official Discord and they did ask me to be a moderator, so I got to be a mod in that Discord. And funny enough, there even like Pete Hines was in that Discord, got to have some conversations with that. But then sadly, I also got to see the downfall of the game and the deletion of everything. So. And I also used to run Pokemon draft leagues. That's not actually the TCG. It was competitive battling with the video game. But built communities out of that to play that. And so now I've come to Lorcana and just kind of bringing that, not necessarily needing to moderate anything right now because I have so much going on, but bringing that deck building, being able to share my ideas and my decks that are doing well and hopefully help people that like those decks and we can, tweak things together. I think that's great. And I guess just overall, I want Lorcana to be a healthy, growing community where we can all like, work together and build really strong decks together and strong ideas and eventually all of us can beat the Ruby Amethyst control.
That's the dream. Set
That's the
25. Here
dream.
we come.
Put the goat in its place, please.
No, I agree. That's one of the things that I love about this community, and I have not been a part of other TCG communities, so I can't speak to that. But it really feels like for the most part, most of the people in this community are all about helping build other people, except for Lorcana Facebook. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, I avoid the Facebook and Reddit.
What are your thoughts on the state of the current meta? We kind of already have an idea with how you feel about
Yeah,
Ruby
yeah.
Amethyst.
But, and I know this is a hot take, and I give it all the time in the Discord. I honestly think, even though Ruby Amethyst is a little oppressive, I think Set 2 has given us a lot more diversity in what I would probably call like the tier 1, tier 2 decks than we had in Set 1. And I like that. I think it shows that the game really is growing. Like obviously Ruby Amethyst is top dog. I'm not going to argue that. But there are decks out there that are evolving to have good matchups. Mainly like Mufasa and Discard kind of popped up and have been doing pretty decent against them. I think. Seeing the fall of Steel Song, I think, was very interesting, and then Steel Sapphire, kind of taking its place. Just we have so much more than just three decks that I think set one had, which the Ruby Amethyst Control, the Steel Song, and then right at the end, Amber Sapphire was
Yep.
kind of coming right up in there at the end. That's what I was playing and pushing, and we kind of got there with that. But this set, I think there's a lot more, and we've got the hyper aggro to this set, which is that's what beat me at our 1K. I almost made top 8, so close. This I played Mufasa, but hyper aggro got me actually.
No, you're absolutely right. When you sit there and put it that way, I mean, Ruby Amethyst is very oppressive at how many top eights it's in. Like I see the meta reports.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. Once you look down at the second, third, fourth, fifth, there's a whole cluster of different decks that are there instead of just the three. Like that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, we're going to talk about this later, but I fully hope that set three is going to help continue that trend.
Yes, 100%. I hope we get something that helps us out with the goat mainly, but I think we're on a good trajectory.
You really don't like this goat, do you?
I don't like the goat. I'm sorry.
It's
I'm a mid-range. Obviously, with the decks I built, I'm very much a mid-range player. I like interaction. I like being able to, early game control, stop things, and then kind of blow up quickly at the end. With the goat, there's no interaction, and I want an answer to that. I want something that I can do.
and to your point about there being diversity, I just listened to Forbidden Mountains meta report for this week, and they went over like the entire season of Rise of the Floodborn and how there are multiple decks that showed up at least like 20-ish times in top eights over the course of like the last 10 or 12 weeks, whatever it was. And yeah, Ruby Amethyst was half of everything. But it's just nice to see that there were so many different decks that that were able to make it in and actually have a showing multiple times, not like what was it, a popsicle deck, which like had a spike for a week or two and then just like disappeared. Uh,
Yeah.
so no, it's just really nice that it is expanding, and I think that's because of the next set, the Rise of the Floodborn coming in and adding stuff to it, and like I said, hopefully Inklands just continues that trend, and we just see more and more decks. I still have a feeling that Ruby Amethyst, just because of what's already there, is still going to be a quality deck. It's just hopefully there are other decks rise to its level.
Yeah. Kind of agree. I think there's a different card that might be a little oppressive in the Ruby Amethyst package, but I'll talk about that in a second. With
So
set 3.
on a different track here, this is something that we could probably spend many hours talking about, and I know that both the Illumineers and This Week in Ink, the Inkwell and B Squared both talked about it on theirs this week, and that's casual versus competitive. And it's been a hot topic. And so just like, what's your feelings on it right now about the whole casual versus competitive thing?
Yeah, so I come from both sides. And I love both, and I think both are valid. So with obviously my background in like Elder Scrolls Legends, I was much more of a competitive player, and with Lorcana, I have definitely pivoted more towards the competitive side and really trying to make winning decks. But my background in like Magic, I played Commander very casually with friends, still do sometimes. And I love that just zany 4-player match. We're all playing weird, janky cards. It's a lot of fun. And with Lorcana at our leagues, we still do that. We'll do the 4-player games. I'll bring like a discard deck, so it makes everybody, all 3 other players have to discard. But it's definitely not a great discard deck, but it's fun. And I think there's room for both. I think the game should focus on both. We don't just need the competitive. Casual helps bring new players in too as they're learning. And I honestly think we'll get formats like Commander. I've already talked with some people about some ideas around it. I think there's a lot of potential for that once we get more cards in. So I like both. I don't want to pick a side.
Well, I think one of the things that you said earlier was that your store there in Denver has a league play that's casual, and then there's a constructed day.
Yep.
And this was a point that I saw a lot of people making on Twitter, is that right now there's not a good outlet for the competitive players to play at. So they want to get their play time in, so their only option is to go to this league play. And if the stores aren't providing opportunity for the constructed and the casual, then they're all going to go to the one spot.
Yeah, that's definitely how it is here in Denver. I wish there was more competitive, but the spot we go to is called Advantage Games, and yeah, they do league and competitive, and they're the only one running regular constructed tournaments. A couple other stores have done like 1 or 2 a set, maybe for a box or something, but otherwise, yeah, and that has caused that spot to become like the main one for the competitive players. They'll drive, a couple hours even to go to that just because there's no other options.
Yeah, I think it's really nice when stores do that. There's only, I think, one store that I've been to where they actually have multiple nights, and they do the same thing where they run 2 nights of casual and 1 competitive afternoon on Sundays. And it's a really nice place, but it's also, the one I go to the most, they always run competitive. They don't even do casual, really. So if you want to test out your decks, or if you're just a casual player, you basically are stuck playing against, at least half the group there, running meta decks, testing out things because they're trying to, they're practicing for a 1K, or they're trying to get the pins so that they can make sure they get all the pins this season, or whatever it may be. Or they're just naturally competitive players who want to be the best. And having casual people show up for that is fairly difficult, which is why, like, this week they did something different and they ran a sealed with some, half and half first chapter and rise. And they had multiple people show up who had never done sealed before and also had never even come into the store before. And I think it's something that a lot of stores really need to look at if they're trying to get people coming in. they need to have those options, not just run the same thing week in and week out. And like, well, we got, 20 people, so I guess we're okay. I mean, maybe you could be getting 40 people if you do it a little differently and give those options.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this too. This last weekend, I went up to Idaho, and my son and I went to two different Lorcana events. The first one was at Phoenix Fire Game, which James, our friend Devin that we met at Gamma, he's the one that runs that.
Nice.
And they, because product was so scarce in chapter one, they just made their Lorcana nights for free. Like you could just show up with the deck and you play. Like there's no price support. I mean, they have the promos and the pins, but as far as like you get a pack for playing, they don't do that. So, but it's interesting though because it was free. There are a lot of families that go. Like there's 3 or 4 kids. There's some parents there, but there's also some competitive people. But it was a fun mixture. And then the next night we went to another store that was paid. It was like, $10. So it wasn't crazy. You get a pack, which is nice. But definitely the people there's only like 16 there, but it was meta decks. Like everybody
Mm-hmm.
is bringing their meta decks because for every win that you got, you also got another pack as prize support. And it was, I mean, I'm not saying that every store needs to run like free events like the Phoenix Fire Games did, because next set they're moving to paid. But it was just interesting to see the difference in the people that came out for the free event because it was a lot more accessible than the people that came out for the paid event.
Yeah.
Yep, that's how our league is here. It's a free league, but then the constructed is $10 buy-in every week, unless it's, they also host our 1K. When it's the 1K, it's a little bit more. But yeah, same, and we get a lot more casual people out at league for sure.
So looking forward to set three, which cards are you looking at already that you want to build decks around? I know we only have a quarter of set three revealed, but there's been
Hmm.
some good ones.
Absolutely. The two biggest ones that come to my mind, and they're both Emerald, which I think we've seen more Emerald than anything, though. The first is Ursula, even though it's an uncommon. Oh my goodness. That card has me so excited. It's a 1/3 that only costs 2, so it's got a good body against steel early, and just getting rid of a song, that hits Be Prepared, that hits Grab Your Swords, like you're getting so much value out of it. And even if it just comes in as a 2 mana 1/3 and you get to look at your opponent's hand, even if they don't have a song, you get to look at that. That's already so much better than that blue cantrip. Now I can't remember what it's called, where you get to see your opponent's hand.
Nothing to hide.
Nothing to hide. Thank you. So much. It just feels so much stronger than that. And then the other green card we saw only a couple days ago was that Milo legendary
Yes.
from Atlantis. Oh my goodness. One of the decks I've been running recently is the green Mufasa, and instantly I'm just like, Milo just makes that deck so much better. Just getting him off the top onto the board and basically having a threat of my own board wipe against someone, that just feels so good. I think he's gonna be really good.
Okay, okay. I've
Um,
heard mixed things about Milo. Like I've heard mixed reactions. What is it about Milo that really makes you think he's gonna pop off?
he's one-sided. I think that's the biggest we all know how big Be Prepared is, and how strong that is, but the fact that Milo only bounces all of your opponent's characters just feels so good. And I like that it's when he's banished. It's not just when he's banished in a challenge. When I first saw him, I thought that's what he said, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe. But if he's banished for any reason, so you could play around with that a lot. I think he has a lot of potential.
Are you foreseeing maybe this is the kind of thing where you banish him yourself?
I think there's definitely possibility. Similar to Mufasa in a way, if you want to run him into something just so you can get all your opponent's characters gone, I think can be really strong.
But just like what happened to my Mufasa, someone playing Sapphire can just make your Milo ink.
Yes, that will definitely still be the weak. Sapphire beats Mufasa, and it will also beat Milo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think the other card is another green one that I'm excited for is Morph.
Yeah.
I do think Morph initially was a little overhyped, I do think he's strong. He gives a lot of really good shifts. Like people were talking about Sad Steel Beast now being able to shift on turn 3. Um, the 2/1 stats though, it still makes green very susceptible to steal. So I don't think it's quite as good as people think, but I do think it will change things up.
I was gonna say, what about the Jim Hawkins? I really thought for sure you'd say something about Jim.
I was actually, yeah, locations are just so hard for me to rate right now, and I keep
Yeah,
trying. I really need to see them in action. So I'm reserving my thoughts for Jim until I can see that locations are actually good enough to run over characters.
that's fair.
I did have one other one I just remembered now. Since I've been running Mufasa decks, and I'm so excited for this because Amber hasn't had as good a draw this set now that we're not using Rapunzel as much because she's just not quite getting us there because there's less challenges. The new Pongo, where you look at the top card and if it's a character you get to draw. It's so much more reliable card draw for a Mufasa deck specifically. That I really like it in that deck. I don't think it's going to be a card you put in any Amber deck, but the Mufasa deck, which I know is going to continue and just get stronger each set. Pongo, instant include 4 of, you're going to have your card draw right there. I like it a lot.
You mentioned that you just can't get a handle yet on locations because we just haven't played with them yet. Is there anything you're thinking about, like how it's going to affect deck building? Is there anything you can see right now, or is it just like without having all the locations and all? Actually, like you said, you like playing on paper. So without getting that interaction and that feel for it, do you really have a feel for locations, or at least how you're planning to go to tackle it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I keep trying to think through it, and I kind of envision locations as okay. It's basically a character that comes in. It has lore every turn, so it's a character that quests every turn, is basically always exerted and at risk of being attacked, but has 0 attack back, so it's not going to kill things back. For me, it really comes down to what their abilities are and the passive lore you're gaining for what the cost is. And I mentioned earlier that I think there's going to be a different card that kind of defines the meta for set 3 as far as Ruby Amethyst, and it's not going to be GOAT. If locations are a big thing, it is 100% Maui. Every location we've seen gets instantly obliterated by Maui. There's no protection for it that we've seen yet. I hope we get something that helps protect locations. That'll make them better. But I think if locations become a thing, Maui's just running every red deck and just kills every location, which makes me like them a little less. So I've mostly been looking at their abilities, and I like a couple of them. I think the Broom Amethyst one is the big one. I
Yes.
think that one has a lot of potential. Plus, it's the only one that does live Maui because it has 7 willpower. So I like that. The blue one, where if your characters are there, they get inked, kind of like. And then Fang, the one that gives Ward and Evasive, I think is going to be good. But again, if Maui is prevalent, it won't matter as much. You just kill it, and then all your characters are now vulnerable again. So I don't know. We're just in such a weird spot with locations that I feel like I have to see them in action because initially I'm kind of thinking they're maybe not quite enough to change things, but we'll have to see.
Didn't Forbidden Mountain just have a couple of card reveals tonight that may
Yep.
be helpful?
The vault,
Yeah, the
Yes, I
vault.
did see the vault.
the vault door, or
I wasn't
whatever.
sure if we were going to cover the new cards yet, but yeah, the vault I did see, and that gives me a little hope. Um, if it's worth running that just to protect locations, we'll see. I'm not sold on it yet, but I
Yeah,
do think it's a
because
step in the right direction.
still it comes back to this idea you have to pay the ink to play the location. You have to play the ink to move your characters to that location, and then you have to pay
So,
the ink to play this vault door for 4 to give it protection. And just feels like that's a lot of ink for what? Like, what's the
yeah.
return on investment here? I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I'm really conflicted on how effective they're going to be. I think this Voyage card that again we'll talk about later. That'll let you move two of your characters to location for free. I think that that makes locations more viable.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't know. We're 25% of the way through the reveals, so hopefully we see more. That makes it make sense.
Yeah, I think we have some surprises coming. So excited for that.
Yes, for
So
sure.
that segues perfectly. What do you think will have to happen in set three to bring the meta into more of a balance so there isn't just one dominant deck? I mean, it's not uncommon for there to be a dominant deck, but to be as dominant as Ruby Amethyst has been, what needs to
Yo,
happen so that that doesn't happen again?
so I've been thinking about this, and obviously, right now, the current meta, it's the GOAT. Next meta, I think Maui might be a little more of a focus because I still think Maui is just too strong a card for its cost. Um, but I think if we get a little bit more discard in some other colors besides just Emerald, that might help with GOAT. But I think the biggest thing is going to be getting better lore drainers. Right now, we just they're not strong enough. Quite the Aladdin on 3 is a 2/2. He's just okay. He's not that strong. The Lady Tremaine is uninkable, 2 cost that takes a lore, and then there's the one that does with the Floodborns. He's also uninkable. Just it's just not enough. I think the best way to check the GOAT is to just keep people's lore down. If we're gonna have these instant lore gainers, especially with locations coming in now, we're gonna have a lot more just passive lore happening. We need more lore drain effects to help balance it. That would also give control more tools, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. But I think that's kind of my first idea. More things like Aladdin and Tremaine, but at a little bit higher power level to help balance
And not
things.
in Ruby or Amethyst.
Yeah, I would agree. Give me some good Amber stuff.
Oh
Amber's my
yeah,
favorite. Give me Amber lore drain or like lore swap or something. Could be fun.
something. Give us something.
Yeah.
And I just go
Um,
back to our conversation with the Forbidden Mountain when Dan was like, the thing that we need to see is that Ruby and Amethyst don't need good locations. And then we've seen nothing like they need to not be good with the locations, their mechanics. And then we've seen nothing but Ruby just be awesome at locations. So,
yep.
Yeah.
I was gonna say another one, the and this goes back to some of the new cards we've seen in Emerald, that Lyle Tiberius Rourke from Atlantis. I think he's kind of showing us that we're going in the right direction with that. The lore pressure a little bit. Um, but he's another Emerald uninkable, and I'm so sick of. I don't run a lot of Emerald these days just because every time I try to build a deck, it has like 25 uninkables, and I'm just like, I can't run this. It's so hard to cut them down in that deck.
yes.
But I do like him, but he is another uninkable that we have to consider.
Yeah, poor Emerald.
It was one we were going to talk about, but let's just mention it now. The ability is that whenever one of your other characters is banished, each opponent loses one lore.
Yeah.
And when he's played, you can give a character reckless, one of your opponent's characters reckless to make them go into a character, hopefully. But yeah, uninkable, 3 cost.
I think he has potential though.
Yeah.
Just have to see what he replaces in green decks because you'll have to swap out an uninkable for his uninkable
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's just too many already.
So, before we move on, I guess James, you and I have an announcement to make, which is
Yes.
leading into the next thing. We, as the time when this podcast comes out, we have a Discord that's going to be open to the public. And right now, we've invited a few early testers in to make sure that it doesn't completely fall apart. But one of the things that we have in here is a place where people can ask questions of the podcast. So, Lindsey, we have a few questions for you, and you can answer these rapid fire or take as much time as you want. There's 3 questions, okay?
Sure.
So if you want a chance to ask us some questions, check on the Discord. There'll be a link, and we'll see you in there. So the first question comes from Matanui Moore. Their question is, when is it worth it? When is it worth having a single card in your deck? It's like, when are you going to run a one of
Oh,
card in your deck?
I know a lot of people do with the control decks, and I think that mostly has to do with mirror matches. They're so long that your odds of getting to see that one card that you might need does increase. I'm such a mid-range player that the lowest I have some two ofs in some decks. Ah, I it really has to be specific tech for games that go long. Because what you have to think about with the amount you're running cards in a deck is that's the odds you're going to see that card. If you're running one of something, any game that's only, you know, 10 turns long, you're never going to see it. You have to just you assume you're never going to see that card not once. So it has to be for longer games. So I think in more control-y mirror matches, that's when you want to tech something in.
Yeah, that makes sense. My son has been getting into the Pokemon TCG, so I've been trying to learn that to play with him too. And that's one thing about Pokemon is they have so many cards that search your deck, and in that case, like it makes sense to run a one of, but Lorcana that just
Yes.
is not in the game.
Was gonna say, yeah, once we get tutor effects, which we I'm sure we will, that makes it a little different. Then you run those tutors to search for specific answers. You can run less of some things and more tutors,
Yeah.
essentially. That will change things. And then obviously if you only have, you want to run four Rapunzels, but you only own one, then run the one that you've got, put something else in until you get more. That's another
Yep.
good
Yep.
scenario. But in a constructed tournament, there's not much reason to ever run one of something.
This next question you kind of answered already. It's from a Mike Berkey. What's your limit on uninkable cards in an average deck? I know it probably varies depending on draw potentials and such.
100%. My highest is my hyper aggro that I built. I called it Blurple Eggs and Ham. It used the Amethyst hyper aggro brown stuff, but I splashed in blue with the eggs song to give everything resist to help against the steel matchup because that's clearly the deck's worst matchup, and it actually worked pretty well. I don't think it's my best, but it was really fun. But I think the uninkable count on that deck was 20, or 18. I have it pulled up here actually. It is 18. And it's rough, but because the deck you're only inking to four, maybe five, it's okay. You just have to be really good about your mulligan and making sure you keep stuff in hand that you're okay with inking early, because you might just draw into a bunch of uninkables. For my mid-range decks, I keep it to around 14. I don't get too comfortable above that. And that just has to do with average draw of getting ink. Um, but yeah, somewhere between there.
Nice. I like that. That's a good answer. This next question could probably take a whole podcast episode itself. So I guess maybe you can just hit some bullet points, but it's from Fergus. Fergus said, I'd be keen to have some good tips for deck building for draft. Done a lot of first set too in Magic the Gathering, but the Magic the Gathering guys usually nail it, is what he says. Any quick tips for drafting?
Yeah, draft is really fun. I've done a couple Lorcana drafts. I've done a lot more Magic drafts though, and it's a lot of the same idea. You really want to make sure you hit your low cost stuff. Draft is so much more about getting a good curve. Just because you see a bunch of really high cost bombs, if you start taking too many of those, you're never going to get to play. Um, so it's really about focusing on the mid game, making sure you have. We're drafting 40 cards, making sure you get at least 3 one drops. I like. It's decent odds to make sure you have one. Twos and threes and fours, I think, are the most important, and then do grab some big bombs. Getting removal is important. I usually won't pass up on that. Like in set one, anytime if you open 2 rares and one of them is a let it go, I always grab it. Removal is just so much harder to come by in draft, so always draft that. And then the last one's card draw, which yeah, always make sure you draft some of those. It's a good balance basically of those things, but I think curve is more important than everything else. Making sure you hit that curve and keep playing a character each turn or 2 characters a turn if you can is good. put you ahead.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did in the sealed event we did on Monday. I got this is how bad it was. I had no removal in my 6 packs, and my sole draw card was a BR guest.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I
Which
went
doesn't
3-2, so I was really happy. I actually had a winning record, but it was rough.
Yeah, like I said, like yeah, removal is good, and I think it just puts your deck above everyone else's, but it's not, especially with where we're at in the meta, and there's not that many removal cards, it's not as important as just hitting that curve.
All right. Well, shall we move on to the ending segments, James?
Yes. So first up, we have only a little bit of news. The first one was last week. A new trailer dropped, and that got us some of the new cards that we are going to talk about, a couple of them. And then also there's a new channel on the official Discord called the Writer's Room, where the people who create things like the flavor text and such, and the story for the videos and the narrative, they're going to be talking about creating those things. So the first one is up now. So if you are interested in that kind of thing, or you like to see a little bit of behind the scenes, definitely check that out. And now there's been, I think, something like 20 cards revealed since we last recorded. And we're going to go over some of them, not all 20. We've already talked about a couple of them, so we're not going to talk about a few of them that we already talked about. But first up, let's talk about Cursed Merfolk. This is an emerald card. It's a 1-cost uninkable with 0 strength and 1 willpower, 2 lore, and it's a storyborn, and the ability Poor Souls. Whenever this character is challenged, each opponent chooses and discards a card. What do we think of this card?
It's really good. I like it a lot, to be honest. Just thinking how, we all loved Lilo set 1. This is just Lilo with upside. Completely ignore that it only has, 0 power instead of 1. The 1 power on Lilo never made a difference to anybody. It doesn't mean anything. The fact that this has Flynn's ability on it, super good. This will be a great aggro card.
100% agree. I, saw people online today talking about how it's uninkable, number one, but so Lilo, and then it doesn't have that willpower. And it's just like you said, Lindsay, I will trade that 1 willpower for an ability any day, especially an ability that makes you discard an opponent's card. And that's a card that you have to answer. Otherwise, if you just ignore it, your opponent, I mean, you're going to be able to build up 2 lore every time from that single character. Yeah, I like it. It's a card that demands an answer.
100%.
And with all those other emerald cards that demand answers or mess with your opponent when they deal with it, it's just, I mean, on curve, you can mess with your opponent every turn. It's kind of crazy. All right, and we mentioned it, but let's talk about it a second. These are from that was revealed by Rebecca from the Illuminary, by the way, and she also got to reveal the Ruby card that we mentioned, Voyage, which is a 1-cost inkable action that is move up to 2 characters of yours to the same location for free. Ruby got a very powerful card with this. Free movement to locations. I mean, come on.
Yeah, if locations are good, this is good. It's a common and it costs 1. And if you have locations, some of them it costs 2 to move characters. That just makes it so much better.
Yeah.
It'll come down to what locations Red gets to run, but yeah, I think it has potential.
Definitely. So next up, the official Lorcana Twitter or Instagram, wherever you happen to see it, revealed Bernard, brand new agent in Amber, a 4-cost inkable with 1 strength, 5 willpower, and 2 lore, and the ability, I'll check it out, at the end of your turn, if this character is exerted, you may ready another chosen character of yours. I like this card. I think this card is pretty cool. Now, I don't know, because it's something that you have to wait until the next turn after you play it to exert it. in order to use the ability, but I like it. I mean, it's something that's going to be really helpful. Someone pointed out Christopher Robin would love this card. But I think just having something that can ready your Ariel or even
Arthur.
or your Arthur or your Sad Beast, anything that can ready your characters that you really don't want, or Cogsworth if you're playing it in a Sapphire deck. I mean, so many cards you don't like to exert for things that this will fix. But of course, it has to stay on the board, and you might only have it last one turn. So, but I think it's cool.
Yeah, I like it. I like that it has 5 willpower. I think that's its strongest suit. Bit of steel resist there. So for some reason, I just keep comparing it to things with like Bodyguard that kind of do this, protecting things that are exerted. He's doing a little different but similar. With Christopher Robin, obviously there's combo potential, but I do think it is a little slow with, you have to wait a turn to exert it. So it'll be interesting to see if it lands in any aggro strategies, maybe.
The the thing that I find interesting about this is I think this is the first card that says at the end of your turn if this character is exerted. So
Yeah.
in order
You're
to
right.
use Bernard's ability, it has to be at the end of your turn.
So you have to basically say, okay, it's the end of my turn, and now I'm going to do this.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we have in Steel, 2-cost Inkable Kita, Royal Warrior, a 2/3 Bodyguard with 1 lore. This is, as everyone said, this is Simba in Steel. And
Look
that's
at
all
me.
it is.
I'm the Simba now. I love this card. Not just because it's another Simba. It frees Steel up to be able to play a really good 2-cost and not have to be in Amber as well.
Yeah.
Simba is just the best 2-cost, and it's a common that we have. So I think it frees Steel up a lot more to do other things.
Agree.
Yep.
Okay,
Agreed.
so we already covered the Milo, that, and just for reference, the Milo we're talking about is the Floodborn that banishes all opposing characters when it is banished. That's a 7-cost uninkable with 3 lore. That's a pretty cool card.
But it's a shift 4 as well, so you can get
shift
it out
4. That's
pretty
great.
quick.
That's one of the only shift 3 lower cards. Most of them are 2, but there's a few that shift 3 lower, and this is one of them. Legendary. Great card. Okay, so here's one I want to talk about and get your opinion on, Lindsey, and that's Heart of Atlantis, a 4-cost uninkable amber item with the ability Life Giver. Exert this item and you pay 2 less for the next character you play this turn. It's the Lantern that costs 2 more, but with double the reduction in cost.
Yeah,
So,
I don't like it at all.
really?
I would so much rather get a Lantern down turn 2 and have that discount earlier. To start, because I can use my early turns to like do that to build a better board presence. Having to wait till turn 4 to be able to drop this item and get a bigger discount, but just the fact that it comes down later, uh I don't see it being run over Lantern, and I don't think Lantern's being run much right now, except in some Mufasa decks. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't see too much potential for it myself.
I'm kind of on the same wavelength. There has to be a card that reduces item cost to get this down to like turn 3. Then I could maybe see it being playable. I mean, I know the Bell, Inventive, whatever, the one from set 1, I think she reduces the cost of the next item you play by 1. So maybe paired in that scenario, it makes sense. But yeah, I also agree. I think it's kind of costly for what it does.
Yeah, I just don't see you ever playing it over Lantern, where you get it down 2 turns earlier.
There you go. Now, this one has also been one that a lot of people are.
This card broke me. It's like
Oh no.
if I get off Sapphire, this is the card that's responsible for it.
Can you take a wild guess at which one it is? You want to take a guess?
Me?
Yeah.
Is it the dime?
No, it's not.
Oh,
No,
we're talking
it's
Sapphire. That's the first one that came to mind.
It's Friend Like Me.
Oh, friend like me.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a five
sorry.
cost.
I want to like Sapphire so much, but why does all their stuff have to benefit the opponent too? Like, there's
Yeah.
almost zero in here that makes me like, there's nothing about this card that makes me want to play it, other than the fact that the art is awesome and our
Yeah.
good friend Martin was one who helped reveal it. But I just do not like this card for Sapphire. And if this is how Sapphire is going to keep going, I don't know. I don't know.
You're hopping off the Sapphire train, huh?
I mean, I'm not there yet, but this card might be the beginning of that.
Yeah.
So it's a 5 cost inkable song, and of course, a 5 cost character can sing it for free. Each player puts the top 3 cards of their deck into their inkwell face down and exerted. That's it.
I think if it wasn't exerted, it would be very playable. I think we'd have a whole other discussion where, because just like whole new world, when you're whole new worlding, you're trying to make sure you get more benefit than your opponent. With this one, because you're playing it on your turn and it comes in exerted, your opponent gets to use it first. That does put you at a disadvantage. The only decks I see running this are going to be Bell decks where you're already ramped way ahead of your opponent already. And the one upside for it is inkable. I think that is something to say where, like, you're in a matchup where you really don't want to give your opponent that 3 extra ink. You can just ink it. So I think it has potential, but it's going to be too hard to get into to to decks enough to see value, basically.
Yeah, no, the only scenario that I saw this making any sense is when you're in those games, the control games that go forever, and each person is at like 17 ink. At that point, 3 extra ink doesn't make much of a difference. But at that point, do you really need a card like this anyway? Unless you're trying to mill them, in that case, maybe it works, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think a mill deck it could work as well.
That's the only thing I thought of. Yeah.
Yeah.
The final 3 cards. Guess what? Here you go. Next time you draw, you're done. Okay, now let's talk about Lucky Dime, the other Sapphire card. 7 cost, uninkable item with the ability number 1, exert the item, spend 2 ink, and choose a character of yours and gain lore equal to their lore. The very first non-character legendary card. This is pretty cool, but it is expensive.
It is. It's a cool idea, and there is enough item. I think when they revealed Scrooge, we were all talking about how there really needs to be a big item that we can cheat in with Scrooge. Because right now, before Dime was revealed, Scrooge just felt so useless. Like, am I gonna cheat in popsicles? Like, no, this is, or I guess Fishbone would maybe be about the best you could get off of Scrooge in a constructed deck. Dime, I think, opens the door at least to Scrooge being playable in an item deck. I do still, but if you don't have Scrooge out, now you're stuck with this 7 cost uninkable. That is it good enough? I I'm very on the fence with it. It really comes down to if item decks can make a comeback, like like they did at the start of set 2.
Or you throw this in your Alice deck and you have Alice boosted up so she has the 5 lore. Then you use the lucky dime, you know? Then you get 10 lore just from that one turn.
Does that work?
Yeah, Steve
Because
came out and clarified that.
oh,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, because I was thinking, like, does Alice like actually gain the pips on the card that Dime would read? But yeah, I guess you're right. Okay. Hmm. I have to
Yep.
take
That
Alice
was
in a
Tamatoa, but
items
I mean, you have
direction.
to
But
wait so long to get Tamatoa out.
see, yeah, like the Ruby Sapphire item deck with Tamatoa, I could see that. That would be really crazy combo. But I think with Scrooge, Dime is good. Without Scrooge, there's not much reason. I would rather cheat this item in.
What about, let's talk about one of these other cards that may be helpful for multiple uses of the Lucky Dime if you happen to have it out, and that's Audrey Ramirez in Sapphire, a 5 cost inkable character with 2 strength and 5 willpower and 2 lore. She's got ward and the ability spare parts. Whenever this character quests, ready one of your items. I mean, if you've got Bell out late in the game
That's
and
crazy.
get 5 lore, and then Lucky Dime gets you 5 more, and then Audrey Ramirez gets you 2, and then 5 more because you can spend to do Lucky Dime again. You got 17
Yep.
more on one turn.
Yeah, I think blue items is going in such a combo heavy direction, but I like it. Um,
Magical
I,
Wishland, right?
and I mean, she's also going to be great with just Fishbone, just getting
Yeah.
more ramp, I think. I think Ward is just the most important keyword too. Um, she'll be good. I think she'll be a staple in item decks if we see them continue to grow.
Yep. Yep. And then we had another item revealed in Ruby, a 3-cost inkable Sumerian Talisman, and the ability Source of Magic. During your turn, whenever one of your characters is banished in a challenge, you may draw a card.
Yeah.
So. I
Card
mean,
draw.
it's card draw in Ruby, which doesn't have much, but it's very conditional. And
Yeah,
mm,
I hadn't thought too much on it. It's, I mean, the problem is Queen. Like we have Queen of Hearts right now that gets you draw for challenges, but even she's not run much. It's
right.
To me, it's going to come down to is the set 3 meta going to be more challenge heavy?
Yep.
And I'm just not sure because this isn't going to include locations because locations can't hit back because it's only when they're banished. So, and we were all excited for Shere Khan and trying to get challenger matters decks for set 2, but there's just no challenging happening because everyone's bouncing everything. And uh, if that continues to be the case and there's not much challenging going on or interaction, I don't think this card is going to see any play.
Yeah, and it's even more difficult to kick off than the Queen because the Queen is just challenging. This one is
Yep.
banishing.
Yep. I think Dinner Bell is still probably better.
We have Tinkerbell, a very clever fairy in Sapphire, 5-cost inkable, 3 strength, 4 willpower with 2 lore, and the ability I can use that whenever one of your items is banished, you may put that card into your inkwell face down and exerted.
Again, why? Like, you know, typically you think you're
Because
gonna
that's what
banish.
Sapphire does.
Typically, you're gonna think you banish Popsicle with Hiram Flaversham, but like you can get that back. Like it seems like it's more
Yeah,
beneficial. Or Fishbone. I mean, maybe you banish Fishbone Quill once its usefulness runs out. But then if you're like running an item slinger deck and you've got Tamatoa, do you really want to put that in your inkwell? I don't know. I don't know.
absolutely not. Nope. I don't think Tinkerbell's very good.
And this is a super rare.
She's not the worst super rare in Sapphire of this. I'm sure you've seen Windy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I that card Windy should be an uncommon, if that. But that's just my opinion. But yeah, Tinkerbell's not great. It might. I don't
Art's
think
awesome though.
Yes, good art.
All right, so this one is a fun one and also excellent art, and that is in Ruby, Prince Eric, Expert Helmsman, 4-cost uninkable, 2 strength, 2 willpower with 2 lore, and the ability Surprise Maneuver. When this character is banished, you may banish chosen character. This one just seems like it's going to be fun.
Yeah, reminds me a little of the red Namari that we do have. Which we've tried running in Mufasa decks a little bit, but she's a little, you get to choose when you use her to banish something. So I don't know. I'm a little on the fence with Prince Eric.
Yeah. Same. I mean, I've seen people use the idea of using Teeth and Ambitions with Prince Eric.
2 for 1 something.
Yeah. But
That's
I'm
true.
same. I'm same.
It definitely will have to see how it can be used. I think it can. It just matters again, like, is it useful enough to put in there because of the uninkable? Or are you just going to run whatever other rush or whatever you need in order to get rid of stuff? But the 2 lore, I mean, you just quest with it and make your opponent run into it.
See, Steve Warner, if you're listening to this, these are what we want to know from the dev diaries. What is the reasoning behind a friend like me or this Prince Eric?
Uh,
They needed a card to use this awesome art on.
I mean, it's true. That is very cool art.
All right, so I think we only have one, maybe a couple more here. Okay, 4-cost steel card, uninkable, action song, and then Along Came Zeus. It's very simple. Deal 5 damage to chosen character or location. This is our first card that calls out locations for damage. So
Yep.
that's very cool. Unfortunately, I don't think it actually banishes almost any location we've had so far, because most of them are at 6 willpower. I think a lot of them are at 6. But
Yeah.
still, dealing 5 damage to a character or a location, and it can be sung at 4 or more with a character, pretty good.
I think as long as you have the uninkable room, you run this over Smash every time. It's worth it. It's a song. It costs 1 more, but it's a song and it does more damage. I think this will make Smash just null and void.
And I can't remember who put it on Twitter. I think it was Nicholas Roush, but he said that there's only one character that costs 4 or less that survives this song, and that's Hiram.
Oh wow, you're right.
So pretty
Wow.
strong removal there.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. And then
Very
finally,
good.
after all of the puppies were revealed, we then got the action 5 cost uninkable in Amber, 99 puppies. Whenever one of your characters quests this turn, gain 1 lore. So, I mean, it's an uncommon, it's uninkable. How often are you going to use it? It's not singable because
Yeah.
it's regular action.
It feels like pack tactics to me, which is why I'm not getting too excited for it. I was so excited for pack tactics when they revealed that, and I am happy to say I was very wrong about that card. I tried it and it failed. I don't think this one's going places.
Yeah, it just seems way too conditional. You
Mhm.
need it at a time when you want to quest a lot, and it's not very often you're going to have a lot of characters on board these days.
I mean, if you have 99 puppies on board, this is a killer action.
You've already won.
You should have already won.
But this is a try hard here, you know? Why
I mean,
settle at 99 when you could get 198?
Listen, if you put 99 puppies in your deck and you put Rockstar Stitch in your deck, and then they have a card in this set that's like a Pongo or a Perdita that says you can pay 1 less to play a puppy, a card named
Crazy.
Puppy, and you have 2 of them on board, so they're free, and you just keep playing them and keep drawing them, and your Stitch just lets you keep drawing and playing because they're free, then you can get 99 puppies on board. But that is the only way that's happening.
Unless your
I'm here
opponent
for
plays
that.
Be Prepared before you quest.
Yeah, that's true. But you get them on board. I mean, that's the thing. You're like, okay, look,
Yes.
buddy, they're all up. I mean, you need to let me win now because I managed to get this to work.
Exodia.
Oh yeah, come out with a card if you have 99 puppies in play, you win the game.
All right. Okay. Are we ready for some Disney Jeopardy?
Are you?
Yes.
I'm ready.
All right.
Ready as I'll ever be.
There's a couple of tough ones on here, but we're gonna start easy here. So for 100, the brooms Mickey created in Fantasia get mentioned a lot, and 2 Lorcana cards. But this is the other cleanup item created in the segment of the movie.
Uh, there were mops too, right? Mop?
Were there mops?
No,
I know there were mops created in the live action version.
I haven't seen Fantasia in so long. I'm such a bad Disney fan.
I didn't look at pictures of it. I just knew that this is what the brooms carry. Let's put
Oh,
it
the
that way.
buckets. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the bucket brigade. Okay.
That was
Okay. That was, yeah,
That's a better phrased question to make it the 100-point question.
yeah. I'm giving that to you. Okay, for 200, this is who gave us the line, "Fish are friends, not food."
Oh, it's Bruce.
Ding, 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 ding.
Good old Bruce from Finding Nemo.
I know, Bruce has to be a card someday. For 300, this is the name of Moana's pet pig.
Oh, it's shoot. I know it because we're always talking about how it should be a card.
I know, our good friend Walter. This is his card he wants.
I have a name in my head. I hope I'm not wrong. Is it Pua?
Yes, it's
Yes.
Pua.
Ah.
Nice.
Good job. Okay, this one is a really tough one. It's one of those ones if you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't. And where you said you're not a very good Disney fan. Anyway, here we go. For 400, this is the Disney movie that received the first PG rating. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten this.
Oh my gosh, I know this. I need to think. I know this. Oh my gosh. PG rating. Oh, why is the Rescuers popping in my head? I don't think that's it though.
It's
Uh,
I will say it's like a cult classic movie. Not super popular, but there's a devoted fan base to it.
oh my gosh. Yes, the Black Cauldron. Yep.
How did you know that?
I mean I'm a big Disney fan. I love I mean I'm a big animated movie fan to be honest, and I love talking about Disney's dark era. And when Don Bluth kind of started showing he might be able to take on Disney as the biggest animator, and that was during that dark period. But then The Little Mermaid happened, and
Uh,
So we just watched this last week, and I can't remember what part it was, but there was a part where my wife and I just looked at each other when it happened, and we're like, "This is a Disney movie." So that's probably was the PG moment.
yes, yeah. Black Cauldron was an interesting choice.
with
Yeah.
that being said, I cannot wait to see like the Skull King and Lorcana. That's his
Yes,
name, right? Yeah, yeah.
the Horned King.
The Horn King. Yes.
I think it
John Hurt.
might be a little bit till they give us some Black Cauldron cards. It's not
Okay.
Disney's brightest era.
For 500. The Atlantean language used in the Disney movie was created by the linguist also responsible for two of the classic show's sci-fi languages. Uh, hold on. We need to rephrase that.
I changed the answer.
The
I hope it's
Atlantean
not
language.
Who's the Linguist.
No, not who the linguist is. Who what the show is. This show's
Oh,
Oh.
okay,
sci-fi
okay.
languages. So he
Well,
created two languages for this classic sci-fi show, and he also did the Atlantean language for Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
I mean, I
For
have a
the show.
guess. I don't know the answer to this. I'm gonna guess Star Trek.
there you
That is
go.
correct.
Ah, yes.
He
I knew they
created
had lots of
Klingon,
languages. I was gonna
and,
say Klingon.
yeah, Klingon and Vulcan, which is hilarious because Leonard Nimoy did a voice in Atlantis.
Yes, he
Hmm,
did.
there you go. I mean, I would say you went 5 for 5 there. So that's a
Woohoo!
high five.
Nice.
Okay. So before we get to the very ending here, before we roll the credits, James, we also have another announcement to make, don't
We
we?
do. We do.
All right. Do you want to tell everybody?
Yes. If I am correct, the announcement is when this drops tonight, we have a card reveal that we will be live streaming this evening. So if you're listening in the future, it's already happened. You can go back and watch it. But if you're listening to this when this drops, there's a reveal tonight we're doing it at what time?
8 p.m. Pacific
8
time.
p.m. Pacific. So for all of you, everyone else except for Pacific, it's late. But we're going to live stream a card reveal. We have been graced by official Lorcana with a card reveal, and we are so thankful to them. And tune in and find out what it is.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Minor correction. I believe we settled on 7:30 Pacific time. So it's 10:30 for you
7:30.
Eastern times.
Just you're following Citizens of Lorcana on Twitter. Just he'll announce when it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's 7:30 or 8, somewhere in that range.
All right, with that being said, Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot about deck building and just even how to evaluate, what goes into my deck. And hopefully I become better, but honestly, I'll probably just keep net decking and tweaking it from there. But if people want to find you online, where can they find you and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so mainly I am on Discord. I work from home, so that's why I'm kind of just always active in there.
When
You
you
can
say the
find
Discord, which one?
the Discord. There's two. I guess I'm in the official Discord, and I'm also in the Lorcana HQ
Okay.
Discord. Um, and then I also have a Twitter. Not super active on that. Well, I guess it's X now. I have an X, and it's Illuma Queer Linz, Lindz, on all those platforms.
Okay. And definitely go check Lindsay out. Like I said, if you struggle with deck building, this is the person who will give you the best advice. So, and she's very helpful. So definitely reach out. And if you liked what you heard, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can follow us on the podcasting platform of your choice. You can find me on the website formerly known as Twitter at Citizens of Lorcana. And as James said, make sure to tune in to our live stream tonight, unless you're listening to this later. And James, where can they find you?
You can find me everywhere online at Dan Regal, and you can check out geekshotphoto.com for social media and photography links for my wife and I. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.